Hello, my name is Annabelle Osborne, and today I'm going to be taking you through the book cover illustration workshop. So I work for the NICO project for Norwich University of the Arts, and I myself am actually an illustration graduate. So briefs like this are something that I actually did within my degree studies, so it's great to take you through a taste of what that is today. So the resources you will need are A4 or A3 paper. This just needs to be plain paper. It can even be printer paper, so anything that you have available. A book cover template. I will show you an example of this at the end of the presentation, and some drawing materials. So pens, pencils, paints, anything that you have available to use will be great for this workshop. So the objective of this workshop today is, using a story that you have written or a made-up story title, create a book cover. So I know that some of you will have some examples or have some stories that you can actually create a book cover for. Some of you might not, so that's where I've got some made-up story titles for you as we go on. So today we are going to create a book cover, and we'll look at these examples on the screen in a bit more detail in a minute. So firstly, what is a book cover? So a book cover is a protective covering used to bind together the pages of a book. Cover art is the artwork, such as an illustration or photograph on the outside of a published product. So these can vary between book covers, album covers, CDs, vinyls. So I'm sure that you've seen quite a number of these different things out there in the world today. And a good book cover visually portrays or conveys the story, enticing potential readers to buy the book. So that's the first thing they are going to see. So we need to make something snappy and look great for us to pick it up. And lastly, the images need to work printed on a hardcover or paperback book and digitally on a website, phone and tablet. So typically, we're talking about quite a number of years ago, when you would create a book cover, it would only be printed physically. But now that we have all our digital tablets and screens, we're also able to find these books online. So whether that's on the Kindle, on an iPad, anything like that. So when illustrators actually create a book cover, they've got to think how it's going to work printed quite big, but also on a screen which will be quite small. So before we get started, there are just some points to consider when we're thinking about a book cover. So firstly, think about the target market and who you want to read the book. The cover needs to appeal to them. So this is, when I talk about this, when your target market, is it a children's book? Is it an adult's book? Is it a teenage fiction book? Because that really will change how you create your book cover to entice that particular audience. What do you want to tell the buyer about the book? What kind of genre is it? What do other books in that genre look like? So is it a horror? Is it like a really happy children's book? That will really also help you come up with some ideas of how we're going to illustrate that. Read through your story or look at your title again and think about how you can visually communicate that story, characters, message, settings and ideas. So even if it's just the title that you're working with, you'll be able to pick out key points that you think, how am I going to visually portray this book? Just some factors that you need to consider. Make sure the author name and title is readable. That's very important. Identify what the key symbols and motifs could be. And lastly, try to create something that captures someone's attention and stand out. So this could be through small details, typography, so that's how we're going to illustrate the title of the book. Choice of colour or imagery. So those are a couple of things to think about when we're going to create a book cover. So just looking at a few examples, and these are of the university, like NUA students or graduates. So this one here, she's on the illustration course, and you can see how she's created the whole book cover for a story that I think that she has written called Feeling Blue. So instantly we can see that the colour palette she has chosen, it it relates to the title. We can also see on the back page how she has used the type within the imagery for the blurb. So that looks quite exciting, a little bit different. You can see how it waves through the image. And at the bottom as well, you can see about how when you open up the whole book jacket, how the image flows as a whole. So that's quite exciting. And also seeing the text, the first thing when you pick this up, you can see the title. So that's great. Here are some other examples. So we've got some more from some illustration courses and also the design for publishing. So the ones on the left from Jasmine, you can see that she's redesigned some of the books from Penguin. Here I would say it actually looks quite graphic-y. She's chosen very simple colour palettes and very simple imagery. And with that, it's a really clear design. It looks really quite interesting. So that's another thing to consider when you're creating a book cover. So you can play to your strengths. So whether you are fantastic at drawing characters, you could maybe draw a character that could be in the book, just like you can see here for Alice in Wonderland. Or if you really like using a simple design and text, you could maybe play around with that. Also on the bottom here, we've got an example from a student called Ellen. So actually what you see here is the final book cover, but the artwork for that was created quite big. So it was about size A2. It was a 3D piece, and then she would have scanned that or taken a photo of it and then worked it up into a book cover. So there's lots of different ways that we can create one. So the workshop today. So read through the story or look at your story title and identify the key themes, symbols and motifs. So this is the first step. So just on a plain piece of paper, I want you to really get right into that story and see what you can pick out. Is it just as simple as the colours that you think of or the character that it's talking about? So this is the opportunity to create a spider diagram and really kind of analyse that title or that text and think, how am I going to make this into a book cover? Number 3, have a look at some examples of book covers. So I've shown you a few today, but think about what stands out, the use of colour, what is portrayed and how the title is presented. So maybe if you've got a story that is a horror, maybe have a look at some examples of some horror stories and how the book covers look, and think about, okay, so how can I bring that into mine? 4, so fill an A4 page with thumbnail images sketching rough, simple ideas for your book cover. So when I say thumbnail sketches, they only need to be small, about the size of a credit card. And this step is really important because it's just mocking up a few ideas that you've got before you produce your final one. When I did the course in illustration, we always use thumbnail sketches because this is the point where you are literally visually putting down your ideas on paper. So very sketchy. You can put notes next to the side of what it's going to look like. So this is just trying to get at least 5 or 6 of some different mock-up ideas that you're then going to explore and develop further. And lastly, number 5, I want you to use a book cover template and produce 1 or 2 of your thumbnail sketches. So I will show you an example of a template in a second, but this is when we choose one of the thumbnail sketches and we really develop that. So that's when you can draw it out properly, you can use colour and really mock it up well. So here are some story title examples if you don't have a story that you have written. It's great to use a made-up story title because if you choose one that already exists, you could easily Google that, you could see what the book cover is, and then you might come up with an idea that's really similar. So if you've got something completely made up, then you have to really be creative yourself. You don't already have something in your mind of what that could look like. So here are some examples. The invisible newt, the friendly fires, the Spitfires are coming. So Spitfires is an aeroplane. a train to Marrakesh, and Splashdown on Pluto. So they could be some examples of what you could use. And then lastly, here is the template. So you can either print this out yourself. There should be a PDF document that you can download and print, but otherwise don't worry if you don't have a printer. On a piece of paper you can just draw this out yourself. It's very simple, and the elements that you just need to remember are the left hand side is the back cover, obviously the right hand side is the front cover, and then the spine